can execute well. I could have done that the last 2 times, It takes a really good day and really good execution with good legs and perfect fitness and perfect lead up. But, I think, getting it done is another thing. So
how involved is your coach on getting you to the podium of that day?
Oh, super involved. I mean, obviously having the best Leadville racer of all time as your coach is, in his prime is, good, but he also he's still doing
he's still
it.
the assassin.
Yeah, you gotta be, yeah. So.
Welcome to Brainstoke. I'm Tom Telford here with Preston Niederhauser in studio today. First episode of the 2025 season. And we've got Zach Calton with us. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
Good. First off, a little bit of business. Thank you, Levo, a mind care company, for your sponsorship. Always a shout out to our smooth leg sponsor, Bolt Shave. Adam Barker, you're awesome. Who else should we shout out? Anybody?
Well, soon we're going to be able to shout out a few more.
Preston's alluding to a couple things. So big. We're going to go from JV to maybe varsity in 2025. The podcast has actually signed a few sponsors, and we're excited to announce them. But we're going to get into that in a few episodes. But as we kick off the 2025 year, I don't think anybody better than Zach to really lead us into a discussion on what big things are happening in 2025. So, Preston, what's your lead-in question? What's your zinger?
All right, Zach. What peak is more important to you?
Ooh.
Francis Peak or Malin's Peak? Now,
wow.
be careful on how you answer this question.
Yes. Because of recent events, I'll go Malin's Peak.
Good answer, Zach.
Yeah.
So political. You're soft, bro.
Francis Peak is close to my heart, though.
Okay, why Malin's? You better tell us.
Yeah, I just got engaged on Malin's, so yeah, I've been dating my now fiancé Lexi for coming up on 6 years, and we're gonna get married this fall.
Awesome.
Like. Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you.
That's a huge step.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why was Francis Peak a real close second?
Yeah, that one was a real close second because I hold the KOM on it, and I think it's one of the bigger climbs in Utah. Definitely a coveted KOM, and I'm very proud of that one.
So yeah, it's a 12-mile dirt climb, right?
Yeah.
If someone was to steal that this June, what would you do?
Yeah, I'd have to probably cancel a few races, do a couple, like a 3-week block and take it back. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
No more point to point. All of a sudden it's Francis Peak.
A little bit of context for listeners. So Francis Peak is the balls, the radar towers at the top of the peak in Farmington above Lagoon. So Francis is roughly 5,000 feet of climbing, 12 and a half-ish miles up. And it's Farmington Canyon's, gravel road climb. It's awesome. Why is it so special to you? I mean, you have the KOM, but why that? Why Francis? What's your relationship there?
Yeah, it's actually, there's quite a lot. I worked at Biker's Edge in Kaysville. And
hand over our hearts.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. I worked there for close to 5 years, and it's kind of it's one of the closest sustained climbs to work. So I would get off work at 6 or 7 and ride over there. And if I want to do my intervals, do my training after work, it was oftentimes on Francis. Friend Kevin Day, just off screen here, organizes a ride on July 4th called the 5,000 Feet of Freedom that I've always enjoyed. It's like a big community event for the Davis County, Weber County cycling community, and I've always enjoyed that. I remember one of the first times I attended with Lexi to your question earlier, when we were at the top, she got a call that she just had her sister gave birth to her first nephew up there. And so that was like a special moment during the 5,000 feet of freedom ride, like right when we were on top.
Yeah.
She got
4th
that
of
call.
July, born on the 4th of July.
Born on the 4th. Yeah.
Awesome.
And and then I think the following year I got the KOM in 2018 for the first time, and then I think it was Alex Grant took it back from me, and then I think in 2021 I took it back during the 5,000 feet of freedom ride.
Nice.
Anyway, so just like
During that ride.
yeah.
So it stood for 3.5 years.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, just a fun climb, somewhere I've spent a lot of time pushing myself. It's beautiful up there. You know, once you make it past the gate, especially, there's, you know, lots of solitude, beautiful view, the radio towers, and kind of feeling small next to those is always a fun experience. So I really like it. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you're meeting a sponsor, someone that's really, it allows you to be a professional biker, how would you verbally describe your resume? Because we know you, but it's super impressive what you've accomplished. So give us your stats sheet, your Riz, as a cyclist.
Yeah, I mean for race results, I started in the XCO scene, and you kind of do that through your U23 years. I mean, some people continue on to pro, but it's like you kind of want to transition to Europe if you're going to do that past 23, I think. And so during that time, I won a short track national championship, which I was super proud of, a collegiate title in the Omnium, and then I got 5th, I think, in the XCO at national champs one time, which was my best result there. So I had a ton of fun in that space, but I also found even when I was racing that, I found some success in marathon racing with like point to point. Podiumed that race several times and won it this past year, and then the industry has shifted a little bit, and gravel is now kind of come to the forefront, and I've had some good success there with a top 10 at Unbound in 2023, 6th place at Leadville in 2023, and another top 10 there the following year. So yeah, I mean, I'm proud to be in the Lifetime Grand Prix. It seems like it's getting more selective every year. This year, there's only 22 guys in there 22 guys, 22 women that are selected. And so I feel proud to make that every year, and always trying to improve my placement there. So that's kind of my main focus. But yeah, I mean, I like all sorts of riding.
Does Lifetime Grand Prix do a Rookie of the Year award?
They do not do a Rookie of the Year award. Yeah.
But last year was your first year, right?
Yep.
In Lifetime, and you ended up 9th overall.
Last year, I ended up in a tie for 10th when I lost the tiebreaker, so 11th. Yeah.
Well, hey, a top 10's a top 10.
Yeah, no, it's
Right?
yeah.
Whether
It
it's
says 10th
7th or
on my name.
10th, it's top 10.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, no prize money for the T.
But that's a huge accomplishment, I've got to think.
Yeah, I was really proud of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's in the money. That earns the respect of everybody in the scene, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I was super proud of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Zach, take us back even before that, if you don't mind, because I'm always curious to see what is the roots of a pro cyclist. So tell us about growing up, your family. How did it shape, you wanting to be in this world?
Yeah, I mean, I was the first mountain biker of my siblings, at least. So initially, we all ran cross country and track growing up, and my older sisters found a ton of success in that. I think my sister Avery won like 12 state titles among various disciplines of track and cross country, and she was equally good, if not better, at soccer, and ended up playing soccer at BYU. My older sister Chloe won several state titles in track and cross country as well. And so I started with cross country, but I liked it, but it was never like a passion for me. It was more of like, just like I would go to the practices and, kind of do what was expected of me. And, I took to it well, but it didn't light a fire in me like cycling does. So after my sophomore cross country season, I decided I was not going to race cross country anymore. And I kind of didn't really know what I was doing. I think I did a year of like alpine ski racing, which I'd skied my whole life, but I think starting alpine ski racing at like 16 is somewhat late. It's just kind of fumbled around for a minute. And then my dad finally convinced me to try NICA my junior year of high school. I ended up joining like halfway through the season. So I did the final 2 or 3 races of my junior year of NICA. And it was like the first race I got my butt kicked, and I don't even know what place I got. Call it like 50th out of 51, in like JV class. And then the next race I got like 25th. And then at the state championship in JV, I got like 9th. And seeing that progression and, I think my dad let me borrow his little bit nicer bike than what I was riding, and getting into that a little bit kind of lit a fire in me. And like, okay, if I work hard all year, maybe I can do well in varsity next season. And then through that process, I discovered Intermountain Cup racing and the like XCO side with USA Cycling type style racing in the summer. And I found a bike club called Summit Bike Club, which is based out of Park City. I don't know that they exist in a formal capacity anymore. But they, at the time, were, I would say, the largest Devo program in Utah, and found a bunch of friends through that, and, riders who are better than me. And that, you just kind of, you find faster riders, you ride with them, you go to bigger races, and just one thing builds on top of another, and you just keep working and slowly improve. And that's kind of how it started.
You said that riding a bike lit a fire.
Yeah.
Define, what was that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to like put a tangible, name on it, but I just felt like I could return to training every day, and I was always excited to do it. And like, the process and, the potential for a positive end result, doing well the following season, it was very clear path to me. Whereas with cross country, like I mentioned, like it went well, like I did okay. And, I'm proud of what I did there, but it was more just like, what are we doing today, coach? Okay, I'll do that. There was no like bigger picture in my mind. But seeing the improvement with cycling and how much more I enjoyed it, I knew I could sustain it. I didn't need a coach necessarily to tell me, hey, you got to go run today. And so that was just exciting for me. I liked nerding out. I would go to different bike websites every day and just see, just try to learn. Because at first you have no idea what you're doing and what your bike is. Yeah. And I just really enjoyed that process. And I just found I couldn't stop thinking about it, at any point in the day. And I was just, every moment was just kind of getting ready for the next day's ride, or, what tires I want to get next or whatever. So it's really exciting.
We got to double click on this obsessive quality.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued because you also just described there, your siblings. I mean, these are talented humans. Yeah. These are not like, hey, I just put 80 hours on, the gaming device or whatever.
Yeah.
So what is it about your family makeup and culture? I mean, it sounds like your dad is like encouraging this competitive nature in all of you.
Yeah. I mean, both my parents have always been super supportive of all of us playing sports. I mean, I think it started in earnest with my sister Chloe. She just she had a rivalry in high school and college with one of her, a daughter of someone my dad partnered with at work. So they were the same age. Her name is Sarah Collister at the time, now Sarah Sellers, who has since gone on to take second at the Boston Marathon. And, that going to the track meets and growing up and supporting my siblings, we've always been super supportive of each other. And that was just like a very like fond part of my childhood. It was like going to the track and watching Chloe crush it. And then Avery came up and she crushed it. And I would always go to Avery soccer tournaments and like seeing the fire in their eyes. You just like, you want to be like your older siblings, and you see their success and the things that make them happy. And you want to like find a piece of that in yourself. So I think the sibling relationship was huge. And yeah, our parents always were super supportive of our athletic goals. So, that obviously was super important too.
How often did your sister stand in a feed zone?
Well, yes, they actually are super.
What are you getting at?
I don't know.
Like he put his years in on sitting in the track, and she's not helping him.
No.
Preston's stirring the freaking pot.
No,
Here we go.
I'm
Come
not
on.
trying. not trying to stir the pot. I'm guessing they probably stood in their fair share of feed zones. Is a
Yes.
thought.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of interesting, because it's like they move away, they start families, they have kids, but they've actually have put in a very conscious effort to come back around, and like point to point's a big one for us, because it's it's kind of my big target locally that they can always usually make. And it's a logistical feeding beast, and it's a long day and it's hot. And anyway, and they're always out there all day running across from Round Valley to, Solomir to the top of Deer Valley to the top of Empire Pass, and then into the colonies and at the finish. And it's a big day, and they've always been super supportive of me in that way.
I've got a confession, like sometimes in big days like that, like in P2P, for example, I've found myself getting emotional in feed zones when I see family.
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced anything like that? I feel like you guys are probably pretty tight.
Yeah, we are super tight, and it's definitely very fun. Like I try to stay locked in during the race, but you definitely you kind of know where they're gonna be, and they're coming, and as soon as they see you, they just start screaming, and it's very.
It feels good, right?
It feels great, yeah, and that's kind of like, because sometimes you're like deep in the wilderness of whatever race you're doing, whether it's point to point or Leadville or whatever, and you there's a lot of solitude, but then like you're thinking. And the race gets hard when no one's looking, and you're like, well, they're going to be, I'm going to get to them in like half an hour, so I can get to them in a good position and be, happy and excited, and they can be stoked, or I can like have given up, So you're always kind of thinking about like seeing your family at the next checkpoint and like making sure you're in a good spot there.
Yeah.
For sure.
Is that a brave face moment, or is it like you can be you, like you can be vulnerable?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely be vulnerable with my family, but yeah, I mean, I definitely try to I try to be in a good spot for sure. I don't want to have anyone travel out and support me and, and give up, or whatever. Yeah. Some races are easier said than done. Some days you have it, some days you don't. But yeah, I mean, I always try to do myself proud, and I think it'll all shake out with the family too. Yeah, if I do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you mind if we dive into a lot of psychology with you? I'm intrigued to know.
No. Yeah.
Because as we kick off a new year, you won P2P. You had some big wins, in 2024. I'm interested to know, from a pro cyclist perspective, how do you recalibrate and reset a new year of intention? And how do you do that in a way where it's empowering, it helps you be accountable and own what your year is going to be like, but also has space for the unknown?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of where, I mean, people talk about it a lot, but there's the process side and there's the end result side. And, after the end of the season, I try to step away as much as I can. I'm never able to fully stop thinking about racing, ever, but, I try to, take a break from training, try other things, focus on, my now fiancé Lexi's running races, try to support her some of those, and her goals there, and just shift focus for a while, but eventually have to come back. And I try to first focus on just like, okay, what did I do last winter, and how can I make a subtle improvement on that? You can't double your training, it just doesn't work like that, but you try to make, okay, what went right, what went wrong, course correct a bit, and just focus on yourself and making yourself better. And then as the races get closer, you can start, dialing in on the races and the more specific stuff. What tires am I going to run? Like, who's going to be there? How does that affect my tactics? But focusing on yourself and your own, achievements in training and your own process, and just trying to improve that a little bit more, get a little more out of yourself. Whatever that means, whether that's sleep, diet, training more, training better, it can be a lot of things, but focusing on that and not trying to focus on other people or the races themselves, I think is important to kind of reset.
How heavy is the expectation of your sponsors? And how does that play into everything that you have to do?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Like, they out loud never really say, we expect you to perform at this level. In the contracts, there are bonuses that are very difficult to achieve. You have to really, you have to be on the podium pretty much to achieve for the most case, any sort of bonus. And it also has to be a podium at a major race. It can't be, a small race for the most part. So, in that sense, there is expectation. But in I think a much more real sense, it's like, that's more of a reward for overperformance. And in the end, they just want to typically support you and, make sure, as a racer, I'm intrinsically motivated to perform my best. That's important to me. That's why I'm doing this. But for them, I think, they're more like, okay, let's focus on social media, or, can we tell the story of the race through the lens of our product maybe a little bit. And, but honestly, I've always found that my sponsors have been very understanding, and they like authenticity more so than commercials, type social media. And they know how bad I want to perform in races. So they don't put that pressure on, really. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued to know if, when you think about the relationship between sponsors, is there a certain race requirement? Is there a commitment to a certain number of events and those kinds of things? How much is that expectation set?
Yeah, I mean, they ask for my race schedule at the beginning of the year, and they try to, formulate a bonus strategy, and, based on, if they sponsor 10 athletes in my sort of sphere, they're going to say, okay, 6 of our athletes are doing this race, we should be there ourselves. And then, they'll have like kind of key events they want you to be at, and they're going to have little activations there. It's a little easier with the Lifetime Grand Prix, especially, where it's like, we know you're going to be at those, and that's, kind of the space I'm filling for this brand, is being a Lifetime Grand Prix athlete for them. And so, those are required, but I'm going to be there anyway. So it's more kind of automatic than spoken, I guess.
It's incredible for me to think through just what you've described. I mean, you start riding mountain bikes as a junior in high school. You're now racing pro, sponsored. I mean, this is your life, and it started as a junior in high school. And I think that's, maybe it's unique. I mean, is there a lot of other peer racers that you know of who started then? I mean, there's so many kids who start on the fast track at 7, 8, 9, 10, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. In a lot of ways, it feels like I started late. But then I also look back, and it's like, I'm 27 now. I've been doing it for 11 years. So it also feels like I've been in the game a long time.
Yeah.
I think a lot of my competitors started a bit earlier, but in some cases, I think that's an advantage to start late in some capacities, where, I don't know. I think some juniors have negative experiences with coaches who are overreaching or don't really understand the difference between coaching a junior versus even a 20-year-old. I think there's a difference there for sure. Especially the guys that, are like kind of on that pro track in high school, right? There's a big difference between taking NICA seriously on your own volition and like going to the Netherlands to race for the USAC junior road team, and I think those guys especially have some interesting experiences as a junior that can be positive for some and negative for others. But so I'm okay with, the timing of everything for me, and I don't think it is a disadvantage or anything.
What's interesting, I mean, Preston and I have coached kids from the time they're very young, and it seems like almost all of those kids who started young and they were intense, their parents were even more intense about, they're on the fast track. Very few of them are actually on the bike today.
Yep.
Yeah,
who are really intense at a young age. I mean, it's not just not racing, like they don't even want to see the bike.
Yeah.
You know?
No, 100%.
So I think there's something to that, right? So what would you say that is a result of? Is it early burnout? Is it?
Yeah, and it's tough to say, but I agree. Like the even the juniors who were successful and are, and did stay, the parents comment, I agree. Like, it seems like they were always intrinsically motivated, even if they were younger. Like, their parents weren't, they're supportive, but never like pushing it and being the force behind it. It was always themselves. Like, I don't want to, get like too speculative, but I think they're, if your parents are pushing you into it and you're just it's kind of like how I was with cross country. I didn't have any sort of like negative push, but you're just doing it because you're at training camp with whoever, and they tell you to go ride. So you do it and you kind of take it for granted. And then as soon as that, kind of junior or U23 support structure isn't there to just sort of make you do it, you kind of look at yourself like, why am I doing this? Whereas if you get into it for your own reasons, you already have your why, most likely. And that pushes you when you don't have sponsors, you don't have a direction, and the race that you targeted gets canceled or whatever, like it's okay, and you keep pushing because you have your own motivations, and it's not really reliant on any sort of other support system.
I've got a thought. Excuse me. I've heard a couple of your prior interviews that you've done, and there's a lot of discussion around the fact that you are a full-time employee and a full-time bike racer, and you managed to make it work. And in one interview, you made it clear that it was your choice. It was your intent to be a full-time employee. And I appreciated that kind of rebuttal or response that you had. What do you think the benefits to your career have been because you were a full-time employee for so long? To be clear, you went official full-time in May of 2024, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So what was the value or benefit you found in working?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's kind of the surface level ones, which is just like time management. It's like you definitely, when you have to work from, in the bike shop days, like, 9 to 7, it's, and you're on the trainer from like 7:30 to 10.
Yeah.
It's like, there's not much room for anything else. And I was attending college at the same time during that time. So you just, time management and I think also like training load management too becomes extremely important. You get a very visceral understanding of overdoing it there that I think maybe some people don't get. But yeah, I mean, also like your work benefits from, I think a lot of times at work, there's not a very clear, if I work hard, I will get this end result, like there is in sport, because of, gatekeepers or whatever it is in your line of work. And so I think getting a very visceral, like if I work hard, I will get this result, in cycling helps you, work hard at your typical job. And your typical job also helps with bike racing, where it's like, if I, kind of on the other side of things, where it's like, just because you work hard, just because you want it, doesn't mean you're going to get the results. You're going to someone's going to crash you out. Other people want it too, this, that, or the other. So I think it makes you well-rounded to kind of experience, both sides of that coin. I think some guys who, maybe didn't have to work or chose not to work, through college, and then go straight into pro bike racing. I don't know. I don't want to speak for anybody, but I don't feel any fear of like, okay, the sponsors dry up and I have to go back to work or whatever. I feel like I'm set up well. I got a little bit ahead, I think, financially from, actually having a job and like getting on my own 2 feet during school and after school. So I feel comfortable. I don't feel like super reliant on, because the nature of these contracts is typically 1 year.
Yeah.
And then, it's like the contract period is August to October, maybe. And so you've got like 2 months to know if you have a job next year. And it's, that's a stressful time period. And I think I can approach it with a little more, freedom and to like just
love it.
What happens will happen.
I love that there's that peace of mind that is there throughout the whole season in reality, right?
Yep.
Maybe it reduces some of the stress or the expectation of being result driven always, knowing that you've got that peace of mind. I also appreciate the idea that when you were working, I'm assuming your training was very intentional.
Yeah.
And it helped you stay super focused. How is that going to change now that you're a full-time bike rider and that is all that you do in terms of putting food on the table?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, I think I've probably focused more now, honestly. It's like you definitely had to be focused back then, but now you have the capacity to be more focused.
Yeah.
And so I think the training is even more dialed in. You expect more out of yourself. It's on some level, I think maybe you hide behind the fact you have a full-time job. It's like, you can put a little asterisk next to, well, I did the best out of guys who work full-time, but now there's no asterisk, And I think especially this year, like I quit my job, so I'll level up like right away.
Yeah.
And on paper, in training and things, I think that did happen. But at the races, I wasn't able to execute at all of them like I thought I would be able to. And that was like super frustrating because it's like, well, I no longer have this excuse. And not that I ever really use it as an excuse, but it's like you expect an improvement for sure. And it didn't come, at least on the level that I wanted it to. And I think that will come. And I've learned to be patient with this sport. But yeah, I mean, it's challenging for sure.
What do you believe that was? Now, as you kind of look back and go, well, I had all the time.
Yeah.
And I was seeing results in training, but what was it about racing and maybe the outcomes of those events where you didn't have the expectations, that you thought?
Yeah. I mean, it's like I quit my job in May. So from May forward, I raced maybe, I'm spitballing here, but like 10, 12 times or something like that. And then of those 12 races, I had maybe 3 that I really, wanted to perform at. And that was like Unbound, Leadville, and Point to Point. And Point to Point went really well. And Leadville went well. I mean, I got 10th and, I finished in 6 hours and 16 minutes, which is, pretty solid time. And I'm proud of it. But I know I just had some issues at the start of the race with it being like 10 degrees colder than the year prior. And you don't know how to dress for that. And then if you're like way too cold, then, you maybe can't push on that first climb and your hips lock up. And that's what happened to me. And it's a small thing, but then you miss the group. And I don't know how familiar you guys or the listeners are with Leadville, but there's a big first couple of climbs. And then there's a really long flat section in the middle. And you really want to be on the right train there. And in 2023, I was in that train. And in 2024, I was solo more or less that entire part. And I still finished in about the same time with, no help through that, 30 miles of flat, very draftable, and so it's like, yes, I had better legs, but I didn't execute. And then Unbound, I just woke up with a really nasty cold, like the day before, and did not sleep for 1 second. Just pulled an all-nighter. I mean, you kind of always pull an all-nighter. You have to wake up at 3 a.m. for that race. But, I just didn't, and you just get a little bit unlucky. And it's like, I'm a firm believer that you make your own luck. But, you just have to be patient with it. Just because you optimize one little thing doesn't mean you're going to get this massive change in your results instantly.
Yeah. We're gonna go into P2P. We're gonna jump on that in a second. But take us into a race. Think of a race last year where you were in the pain cave of all pain caves, and tell us about that. I want to spend a little bit of time just on mindset, because as I think through, the journey, kind of watching you, from afar, your mind game is legit, and I want to hear more about it.
Yeah. I mean, like Unbound, I think is a great example. That race is so hard. But I got to the first feed zone, which is at, I think, mile 70. So you're 3 hours into a 10-hour day. And I ran a hydration system because you have to have like 2 water bottles and a Camelback size reservoir to make it from aid station to aid station at that race. And I figured I would run it on my frame rather than my back to save, my back some pain. And so I had the hose running across my handlebars, and I installed a little, in hindsight, very fragile clip on my handlebars. And so when I went to change out the reservoir at aid 1, I snapped that clip. And without it, the hose is just like flapping everywhere. It's going to get in my spokes. Like, this is a mandatory thing. And it's like, oh my gosh, we spend so much tires worrying about flatting and all these things. And I just broke this clip that's like mission critical to the race.
It's probably like 50 cents.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. Like the cheapest little, and I had like super glued it onto my handlebars, And anyway, so I did have a backup, but it wasn't, it's just a delay. And I think also some of the guys, there's at Unbound specifically, there's this big, like, Bahrain Victorious sent like 5 guys to race for their guy Mate Mohoric. And I think, guys like Keegan were like, I'm better at these kind of self-supported feed zones. So I'm going to feed really fast and attack out of the feed zone to, take advantage of the guys who don't practice these gravel style feed zones a lot. And so losing 2 minutes there at a critical juncture was very mentally tough, and also meant that, not because of my legs, but because of something else, I'm 3 minutes off the back, and there's still 7 hours left in the race. And I just had to go essentially solo. There's no one back there that's going to help you make it to the front at that point, right? Because you got dropped for kind of a random reason, not because of legs. So you're not like with people of similar strength. And I had to chase back on there, and that was really difficult, and, set me up later to eventually, explode earlier than I would have hoped. But I think being able to compartmentalize, like, okay, it happened, I'm here now, what are we going to do about it, rather than give up. I think, as I'm going through the guys there, we went through a big mud puddle, and a few of them had mud in their tires, and you can kind of see they're just like, I got dropped because of the mud. Like, my day's over, they're kind of giving up or whatever. And just always being able to compartmentalize. It's like, it doesn't matter if you're in 70th place, like, you're in 70th place and you're 3 minutes off the back. What are you going to do about it? And I think not giving up, compartmentalizing, and just focusing on getting the best effort out of yourself has always paid big dividends.
That's brilliant. To compartmentalize. I mean, you can see, especially in those longer distance races, how many people really, they're blowing themselves up at that point, right? It's like they lost 3, but everything after that is really a choice to them. Yeah. Aside from compartmentalizing, do you think about how do I get back on, or is it, hey, I'm just going to do X watts for this time, take, eat an elephant one bite at a time type thing? Like, how do you do that? How do you get back in it?
To tag onto that, what's the process of compartmentalizing? I assume they're probably hand in hand, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to make a quick decision about that. It's like, okay, am I time trialing to the finish, or am I time trialing to the group? And like, what are they going to do? And I in that particular instance, I had faith that the group would slow up after the feed zone, after a surge. I didn't think they were going to keep going full gas for 7 more hours. And I knew I had the fitness, it's going to burn some matches, but like, I thought I had the fitness to make it back. And eventually I did. And it took a lot out of me, but yeah, you just have to make a decision based on your experience, and you're not always going to make the right decision. But
how long was that chase back?
That took probably 28 minutes or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's it's like you're going full gas for those 28 minutes, and then when you get back, you don't know what's going to happen with the group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you measured that effort?
What?
I'm curious. Have you measured that 28 minutes?
I have, yeah. I think 28 minutes, yeah. 28 minutes, 12 seconds. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I bet you have.
Yeah.
His best 30-minute power for the year.
Yeah.
Totally. No, there's something there that I want you to just spend a little more time on, because we've had some pretty cool people on the podcast, and aside from the podcast, we've had a lot of dialogue with people over the years, just in terms of racing at a high level. It's often, I think, perceived that these are incredible athletes, fitness, they push X watts. I believe all of that, but I also believe that they're obsessively tactical. So talk about that, because even hearing you, on other podcasts, I'm like, this is a brilliant mind. Like, this is a tactician. So can you just speak to that part of it as a skill in pro racing?
Yeah. I mean, I think tactics are, it depends on the race, at Unbound, for example, like I accept that I'm not someone who can dictate the race from start to finish. This field is just too strong. I don't know that anyone can dictate the race from start to finish, but I need to play the race as it comes on some level. And then at other races, like point to point, I think I'm, going in as the favorite perhaps. And so that, and I think that changes things. You can kind of try to slowly grind down the competition. You can, try to overpace it and get them to pop early. You can try to coax them into an effort, maybe harder than they think, and hit them where you think they're weak. And I do spend a lot of time thinking, you have to understand who you're racing against, your own skill set, their skill sets, and do your best to, play to your strengths and play against their weaknesses. And I think about that all the time, especially like with gravel, tire choice comes into play a lot, where it's like BWR Arizona was a fun one last year, where it was like a 5-minute climb into a 20-minute descent right away, like right from the start. And the descent was loose and big moto whoops, and it's just awkward on a gravel bike. And kind of deciding to rather, it's 5 minutes into the race. On some level, you want to like wait it out. But in the end, the strategy ended up being like, let's go really hard at the beginning, play to our, my mountain bike background. And you also kind of talk to other guys that it works with. You don't have official teammates, or at least I don't, but it's like, okay, we're good at mountain biking. Let's take advantage of our mountain bike skills and go here and make the roadies uncomfortable. And then, we've reduced the group size to 10, and you can play a group of 10 way better than you can play a group of 75. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's a huge part of it. And it's also gives you that confidence on the start line. Even if your plan may or may not work, having a plan and racing like you're going to win and not just being like, I'm just going to hang on to whatever happens every race. I find those are my, best results, where it's like, if I do this, I know that's going to maximize my chance of a result.
Yeah.
And it makes you can dig deeper in those key moments because you've set them aside beforehand as key moments.
Yeah,
for sure.
How much do you think about going into the start line? Do you have a process of getting yourself ready to suffer? I mean, that's a strange term, but
yeah, I mean, I have my rituals, I don't know if it's necessarily getting ready to suffer. I mean, you think about it a lot, for sure. That's my favorite part about bike racing. That's when it's bike racing. The lulls in between are not what I, come to race for, So I've never had a tough time digging deep there, but you definitely have your rituals. And I think, getting your body and mind to kind of connect on that and be ready is, and following your own, kind of pattern to get into that mindset, I think is important. I've got my little things I do the night before, the morning of, but to me, just making sure I eat right, sleep well, stretch, do some mobility, and just make sure I'm as ready to go as I can be. That's what sets me up to be ready to suffer.
do you have a playlist? Is there something rolling when you're doing all that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a little more like, whatever with music. I always listen to music, but I don't have a go-to playlist. Sometimes, it varies a lot for me. Yeah.
Are you a zen out, kind of like calm before the storm, or are you, I've got, I don't know, what's your point, boys? You like What do we got?
I would say I'm more on the zen out side of things,
Yeah.
than like listen to like something super heavy. Yeah. I think the adrenaline is going either way, and it's like, all right, hold off. We're not starting for 2 more hours or whatever. That's like more what I'm trying to do is like calm down a little bit.
Channel it.
Yeah, channel it, wait for the right moment, because the adrenaline comes easy.
Will you share a little bit or talk about how you feel with regards to being in the race and racing the right way, or maybe like racing with integrity? And I'm trying to figure out a better way to ask this question. But I get the impression that you race the right way. Like, you probably don't attack in the feed zones. You probably do more than your fair share of polling, et cetera. Like that concept. Share your philosophy with regards to rubbing shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's true. I think there are some guys who know that, they can put a hip into your handlebar and you'll break, whatever, and they do that. That's never been my style. And yeah, I think those things play out in the long run. I think if you're in a mood, if you take advantage of someone in a negative way, I mean, racing's racing. You want to play it tactically, but if you do something a little shady and then you find yourself next race in a 2-man move with that person, it's easy to just be like, you know what, I don't really like the way you race and I don't trust you, so I'm just going to sit on you or whatever. And I think racing as fairly as you can and contributing to the group and being on some level being okay with spending bullets makes people want to be in moves with you. And I think long term, especially with this field that races with each other week after week after week, year after year, I think it does like eventually pay dividends when people want to be in moves with you because they know you'll contribute.
Yeah.
If person who doesn't have that reputation gets in a move, the move is like, oh, well, we don't trust this guy, so that gets brought back. You know? Whereas if you get in a group that is confident they can work, I think it pays in the long run.
You shared, I think, with regards to your Gravel Worlds 2023, USA Cycling kind of asked what would be your intent or your plan, and you immediately said, "Whatever the team needs, I that's what I want to do." That goes a long way. Maybe talk a little bit about why. Why are you all in on team?
Yeah, and I mean it's being I'm a privateer, right? So I have my own sponsors. I don't have any official teammates. I have a few people that I share a sponsor here or there with, but no like real teammates. And racing with USAC was the one opportunity where I had to like have a full team.
Yep.
And this is getting a little bit into, kind of the interesting nature of USAC in general, but some years they send a team to Worlds that's just kind of like, yeah, whoever applied, whatever, pay your own way. We'll, see it, do whatever you can, right? And that year they I think they thought they had a medal contender with Keegan, and they wanted to send a strong team and give a little bit of financial support, a little bit of, they're going to have soigneurs in all the feed zones and doing massages, the few nights prior, and they're putting investment because not for no reason. It's because they think Keegan can medal, and I think buying into that is super important because that some team is going to, and being part of something bigger than yourself is way cooler than going and racing like a ragtag team of people who are just all racing for themselves and nothing occurs,
Yeah.
And, I think on a perfect day, he could have medaled or won that race. And, I think he had a couple crashes that year, and it ended up being way more hectic, right? A gravel road here in the States is 40 feet wide, 50 feet wide. And over there, it's like double track.
Yep.
And I think there were it was either 180 or 280 starters, but a massive field to funnel into 2-track. So in the end, the like official teamwork was tough to do, tough to position well. But I was super honored to be part of a team that, had a real medal contending chance at that race. And yeah, buying into that was easy.
Why is the buy into that? Why does it feel good to help a buddy on? Like, I mean, I think of all of the road rides we all do, and when someone's in the hurt locker and you get them on your wheel, or vice versa, like that feels really good. That's really rewarding to me. Why is that way for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's a unique situation where you can, like, help someone achieve their goals. In that situation how hard this person has worked to put themselves in a situation and represent, your country well, and you kind of, you have similar goals, and it's like you get to be part of something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
I could not be part of a medal contending team if I just went there by myself, or if there was no team. And I don't, being part of my own 35th place there is fun. And I love racing. And in the end, I did get to push hard for my own result. But, the prospect of being part of something bigger that's only possible with more than one person working for it I think is really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you just get to be part of something that you wouldn't be able to without that person, and they wouldn't maybe get to do it without you and the rest of the team.
Yeah. There's something to be said about suffering for something greater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it seems like it's your community, right? It's your livelihood, it's your family. I mean, you mentioned off camera that you spend time with Sophie and Keegan, dog watching and taking care of things there, and so that's cool that connection is there. When performance is your job, I'm intrigued to know about this. When you think about performance being the job, the nature of it, reflect back on point to point what you were thinking about in that performance specifically, and how do you then think about 2025 as you look forward? Because that was legit,
Yeah.
Some of us were there, we had an interesting day of P2P with a bunch of our friends, and watching you do what you did was amazing. So talk about that, but then share a little bit about 2025. When you have big results in performing high, what does that translate to in the following year?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, your perspective shift. Like, I've wanted to win point to point for many years, and it took me way longer than I thought ever. Like, I think the first time I ever went, I was like sixth, and I was like, still a junior at the time. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'll win this thing in like the next 2 years. And it took like 8 years, I think, and it was, so finally checking it off was really important. And then you kind of look at your, it's like point to point is a big race to me. It's a big race to Utah. It's, I think it's a true test of a marathon mountain bike racer, like more so than maybe any race in the country. But at the same time, it's not the biggest race in the world. And so now that I've won it, it's like, do I really want to put focus on that and go for 2, go for 3, go for Alex Grant's like 10 or whatever he won? Or do I want to, kind of move on to a bigger pond? And balancing that is tough because, I can race only the lifetime Grand Prix races and only world championships and really focus on those. And, maybe my goal there is to get two top fives all season, and finish in the top 10 of the Grand Prix, and that's huge and important. But I also get a ton of satisfaction about winning in front of my own community and racing on the trails I grew up learning how to ride on with True Grit and point to point. So balancing that is important, but for me, I have aspirations of winning bigger races outside of just the local community, and so I want to push for those. And I think point to point will be there for me, and I'll still race it this year, but I do still want to focus on trying to do the best I can more nationally, and that's where my larger goals lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing what they are?
Yeah.
What's
What
on the goal
are
list?
the A races?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can podium Leadville, so that's my big goal for this year is to podium Leadville. So I think if I can execute well, I could have done that the last 2 times, it takes a really good day and really good execution with good legs and perfect fitness and perfect lead up. But, I think, getting it done is another thing. So
How involved is your coach on getting you to the podium of that day?
Oh, super, super involved. I mean, obviously having the best Leadville racer of all time as your coach is, in his prime is, good, but he also he's still doing
he's still
it.
the assassin.
You gotta be, So no, it's good. And he's very supportive of it. And, I get little inside lines about how the race is going to play out the day before, which is, a nice little advantage because like I kind of alluded to with Unbound, like some people get to dictate the race, and especially Leadville, where there's not really that much drafting, and it's more about just what's your watts per kilo at 12,000 feet. He and a couple of other guys can kind of dictate the race a bit more, and so understanding how it's going to play out that way is important. So he's super supportive with that for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we need to be there.
Come on out.
We need to be at it.
Yeah,
There's so many cool people who are, end up at that race and want big results. So when you think of the rest of the year, anything else that's big, may not even be races, just things. I mean, is the wedding happening
I was
this
gonna say
year?
the wedding's in when is that?
Yeah, I think we're shooting for November. So
Okay.
a little off season. Yeah, we thought about the week after Unbound because you get pretty smoked by that race and you take a whole week off at least off the bike. But yeah, I just figured, it's the smart part of me is like, I don't know if I should be trying to help plan a wedding like with Unbound coming up, So yeah, we're gonna shoot for November. We don't have like a hard set date, but sometime between like November 1st and Thanksgiving. So that's a huge goal that I'm super stoked for. And then the World Championship courses for both gravel and marathon worlds look really cool. So I think shooting for one or both of those in addition to the Grand Prix is going to be a big goal for the year.
Where are those at this year?
I am blanking on gravel, but I believe marathon is in Switzerland. I should know that, but I've looked at the course file, but I'm like kind of drawing a blank right now on the country. Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, what a cool thing to end up in Switzerland of all places.
Yeah,
that would be rad.
yeah. It'll be it'll be really cool. And I raced Marathon Worlds in snowshoe last year, and that's a cool course. It requires a super complete mountain biker, but it just doesn't play to my strengths as well and doesn't allow you to work through the field quite as well. And I personally believe that marathon and gravel races should be like properly long, and that race was only like 4 hours. And I typically the European-based marathon worlds are more like 6 to 8 hours. So I think that'll play into
Benefit
our
you.
hands a little bit more, and maybe not having as favorable of a start position a little bit more.
Yeah.
So
When you think of the year and you look at intentions and goals, aside from races or events, are there specific things that you look at that you're trying to improve yourself? Meaning, this part of my, like Preston and I, we work on our honey baked ham, like our love handles. That's a problem. Like that's just going to slow us down a little bit. Is there specific things for you that way, small improvements within the game that help you align those bigger goals, right? Like you can't just get fast, say, I'm going to get faster, right? You got to work on these incremental improvements.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of break down the season into, little parts. And I think dialing in your schedule and understanding, like last year I did Leadville and then went straight to Breck Epic. And I knew it was going to be difficult. I knew I was obviously not going to be super fresh for Breck Epic, but my hope was that, the best competition would also have raced Leadville the day before, and I could overcome, whoever else showed up to Breck Epic with fresh legs, because I think most of the best riders would be racing Leadville the day prior anyway. But it ended up kind of smoking me for the end of that season, and just like recognizing that and being like, okay, that's too much, and it's not like you're not getting a positive recovery from that. And either, saying, hey, I'm not going to race point to point 2 weeks after Breck Epic, and really recover, or I'm not going to race Breck Epic so that I can race point to point and not, be, faltering in October. And, maybe settling down in the spring and just making sure you're, scheduling and fatigue management, I think is like the thing that even pros have the hardest time with, because you want to race everything. But really picking and choosing your battles is huge, huge there. And then, you learn little things, dial in your nutrition a bit more, get some blood work done, see if you're deficient in anything, take care of that. And that allows you to train more confidently, because when you're on the ragged edge of overtraining and undertraining, you want to be confident that you're doing the right thing. And if you go get a little blood work done and it says you're like crazy low in vitamin D or iron or whatever, it's just staying on top of that stuff and accepting help too. Like, it's like I've been doing this for 10 years and, but I still lean on a coach, a nutritionist, others' advice. I accept input from people, because it's hard to really be objective about your own. It's pretty easy to be objective about someone else's, but you have all these feelings and emotions and other things about your own performance. So it's good to have a group of people around you that you can trust.
Let's talk more about this. I'm intrigued about this very thing. You're a coach, right? I mean, you've been at it for a long time. You're a pro. You're now coaching other people. When you think about that very thing, just the objectivity and the willingness to allow others to see in behind the curtain, know what's going on, know what you're doing. Talk about that relationship, and both as the athlete being coached, but also in how you coach others and why that's important.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I think a successful coaching relationship definitely depends on a lot of trust, like I know Keegan knows what to do. He's obviously hugely successful, and and I've spent enough time with him to know he knows what he's doing. But, especially early on when I started with him, it's like you get this feeling like, oh, he only gave me 15 hours this week with like these like not that hard of intervals. Like he doesn't know what I'm capable of. Like I got to text him and be like, dude, this is too easy, and he texts back and he's like, well, it's not about this 1 week. It's about the bigger process and zooming out, and it's a long season, and you're probably over chewing and burning out and kind of going through this unproductive cycle. That's probably what you're used to. So now we're going to focus on building more consistently. And until you feel that and you race better than you've ever raced, and you have the patience to see that come full circle, it takes time to build like a fully, like, okay, I trust this person is, putting their full effort into my training plan. And same as a coach, I start with new athletes, and, there's two different types of athletes. Some athletes, it's like, okay, you got to do the workouts, but more often than not, it's exactly what I just described, where they're like, I can do more, I can do 20 hours a week. I can do 25 hours a week. Like, push me, I can do way more intervals. And it's like, yeah, you can, but it's not productive. And, developing that relationship where, you've got each other's back, is super important, and it takes time. And I started coaching in 2021, and I don't feel like I got, to that super, trusting, like, wow, like I didn't know this was possible relationship as a coach, probably until halfway through 2023 with any of my athletes, and now I've got several, I think that are performing better than I think they thought possible when we started. And understanding that, and, now that trust system is built, I think it's a super rewarding experience, but it takes time.
I bet it does. Just the trust factor and seeing the results and seeing those things. Yeah. When you think of yourself as a coach, but also as an athlete, what do you find yourself becoming obsessed over that you just can't? I mean, it's just your thing, right? Whether that's gear, whether that's I don't know, nutrition. Maybe it's sleep. Maybe you're, addicted to the Whoop. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, your training stats are very hard to, you always want more, more is better, right? Like I train hard, I get better. So more is always better. Right. And so, yeah, keeping on top of that and, your annual training volume, your weekly training volume, like, okay, last year when I went to Tucson, I did, 60 hours in 2 weeks. This year I want to do like 66 hours or whatever. That's something that I obsess over. And, it's always, it's hard to balance because you don't want to overdo it and blunt any sort of adaptations. Cause there is a too much and it comes quicker than I think, especially like seasoned athletes understand. Like, I think over time, when you become fit and you become sort of numb to the fatigue, it's like the first time you go out for your 100-mile ride, you get like physically sore. Like, your body tells you like, take a break. And there's a very easy, like, oh, I'm overdoing it, I'm underdoing it. But when you've been doing it for 10 years, you don't really get these like super, objective feedback from your body that's like, oh, we're overdoing it. You kind of have to look at a bigger picture. You have to have a good coach. So yeah, I definitely obsess with the training data for sure. That's kind of my big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny when we had a great visit with Keegan and Sophia, and one of the things that I wanted to ask them, which I want to ask you as well, is the paradox of comparison as an athlete. How do you balance that? Enough comparison to know, am I even in the realm of my peers, versus the toxic part of comparison, which is always comparing, and the comparing, it crushes you, right? It's like, it becomes a negative motivator versus positive, inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's definitely tough to balance because on one hand, you can look at, your competitors and see that they're training hard and that lights a fire in you. It's like, well, if they're training hard, I'm going to train hard. I think at this level, like my eyes are on the Grand Prix for the most part, and there's 22 guys. Like none of those 22 guys are going to be taking it easy. So I think I've found lately it's better for me to just focus inward on my own. I think I'm intrinsically motivated. I'm disciplined. And unfollowing some of your competitors on Strava.
Yeah,
and just be like, you know
that.
what? I'm just going to focus on me. I used to post everything on Strava, but now it's like, I post here and there. I like the social element of Strava, but it's, I think it can get, it's your own mind, but it can get toxic quick. No one's being toxic, but it's just like, you can just constantly fear like you're not doing enough of. And even if you're doing enough volume, are you doing enough VO2? Are you, this person's running and lifting heavier than you, it's like, and everyone has their own approach, and it's just like, all right, I gotta lock in on my process.
Yeah. And trust
sure.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that easy to do, to trust it?
No, it is hard. Yeah, it is really hard. But, it's like, I know if I can just keep improving, like that's enough.
Yeah.
So
how do you measure that?
Oh, it's a lot of things, there's obviously like your 20-minute power is kind of the go-to, but you've got all sorts of littler things that you look for. Like, okay, you take little notes in Training Peaks or whatever, like, all right, this is a super tough workout that I only get prescribed like, a few times a year when I'm far away from races, and like, how did I do on that workout? You have little benchmarks. And then just, subjective feelings of fatigue, it's like, okay, I got through this time last year. I remember like this, I just got back from St. George doing kind of my first little mini block. It's like 8 days long. And last year I did that. And I remember being like my back hurting the whole time. And it just like wasn't comfortable. And I was like I was kind of fighting it the whole time. And this year I feel a little fresher and the power numbers are comparable. And it's like, even though I didn't like exceed any sort of crazy target, it's like, okay, I'm managing that load a little bit better. Cause if you're stacking days and weeks and blocks and months, you don't want to be like crushed very often. You want those days to come few and far between, and then have a rest day come in, pretty quickly if you're really feeling like the motivation dip, and so just staying on top of that. But it's a lot of subjectivity, which is why it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So true. I mean, just to know how to trust it, and having your process, your system. A couple fire at you questions, to close out.
Yeah.
So, Preston, do you have any that you want to share? I've got a few that I want to fire away.
Go for it.
If you had a choice, aside from the plan and your coach like hitting you over the head with, the plan, do you reach for the gravel or the mountain?
Oh, it pains me to say it, but I have to be honest. I reach for the gravel bike more. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I love mountain biking, but I love training, and you can kind of control it a bit more out on the gravel bike and not on the road bike. It's like, especially, maybe this isn't such a big issue nowadays, but it was like during COVID when I first started, like, working with Keegan and training hard again after a little COVID break. It's like you're running into people and you let them by, and it's like you start to become, it's like, well, if I have a workout, like whether or not you want it to, you start to become resentful of people like enjoying the beautiful trails, and that's not a healthy place to be. So you're like, I'm the asshole here. I'm going to go ride on the road and let people enjoy their shoreline. And when I can like be okay with, getting interrupted or whatever. Anyway, so I train on the road bike quite a bit. I love the mountain bike, of course, but yeah, for better or worse, I'm on the gravel bike like 6 out of 7 rides, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With somebody or without, if you could choose. I realize your career dictates that a lot, but
yeah. I mean, yeah, if I can choose and all else being equal, with, for sure. Yeah. I love riding with people.
sweet.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Whoop or Garmin?
Oh, Garmin, I guess. Yeah. I don't have a Whoop.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's interesting to just see who's using, the device, the wearable device, inside or outside.
Outside. Yeah, absolutely outside. Yeah, not even close.
Best trail you've ever ridden in your life, anywhere in the world?
Ooh. Oh man, I don't even remember the name of the trail. I think it's just a section of the Colorado Trail, but that trail's like 400 miles long. But Breck Epic Stage 3, I think this year, you go up, I think it's called Mount Guyot, and then you kind of drop down, climb another fire road, and you drop into the Colorado Trail, and it's like a 40-minute descent, and the top it's really that like loamy dirt that we don't have a ton of here in Utah, but it's just kind of like soft, and you kind of drifting, but you also have a ton of grip. It's like, and then the top is kind of flowy, and then at the bottom it kind of drops into like some like that like really nice like Colorado high country chunk. And it's like, I swear it's 40 minutes of just, you don't have to pedal one time. It's awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, love it.
Climbing or descending?
Climbing. Yeah. I mean,
And you're
both.
you're an enduro guy.
I
at
know,
your
that's
roots.
interesting.
Yeah.
I've heard more guys say, I thought I had him, and then the downhill came.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love going downhill, but it's like going uphill is like who I am,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What is it about that? Just to close, finish on that. The enjoying the hurt, the good hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't even necessarily need to hurt, but it's just like there's some clarity, life has tons of stressful things, in and outside of racing. And when you're out there just, grinding out your workout, it's really calm, and it's good for you. You get a really clear headspace, and I don't know. You're in a good spot when you're out there working for it.
Amen.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Any mantra that you're taking into 2025?
Oh, I'm not a mantra guy. Let me see. Work hard work. Yeah, I guess that's kind of been my one, like hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. So that's work hard.
Boom. Mic drop.
Yeah.
All the best, Lexi and Zach, in
Thank
2025. Wish you all the best. Thanks for being on.
Yeah,
Thank you for
you're
having
awesome.
me. It was awesome.
You've had your daily dose.